A former ambassador to Russia has urged Australia not to commit troops to a peacekeeping effort in Ukraine. Peter Tesh has told Sky News there are other ways we can help instead. Live to our political correspondent Cam Redden on this. Cam, another voice, a prominent voice, in fact, against putting boots on the ground.
Yeah, this is an important political issue as well, Kieran, as we approach the election campaign, because there's a political divide on this. The Prime Minister keeping open the option on the table as that of committing some troops, Australian boots on the ground, to a coalition of the willing peacekeeping force in Ukraine. Of course, the prerequisite for all of that is there needs to be peace in order for there to be a peacekeeping force. So this incremental breakthrough today, not enough to trigger any of that, but it remains an option on the table. Already the coalition, Peter Dutton, even a former Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, have all urged against necessarily going down that path, that there are other ways for Australia to assist. That might be through additional technology, through funding, through defence infrastructure, through training troops elsewhere, but not necessarily putting Australians on the ground as part of this operation. An intervention too today from Peter Tesh, the former ambassador to Russia from Australia, former ambassador to Germany as well, speaking to Sky News today, laying out the case for Australian involvement, but he says that that may not need to and perhaps should not extend to putting Australians on the ground in Ukraine.
Putin doesn't want peace in Ukraine, he wants a peace of Ukraine. And while ever the European nations are able to marshal the reserves, that is an important step. We should be encouraging it, we should be supporting it, potentially not, in my view, with troops on the ground, but there are other ways we can be helpful. Putin wants and needs this war to continue.
Defence spending will be a key part of this. The Trump administration has called on all of its allies, Europe, but also Australia and others, to boost the amount that it spends on defence. At the moment, Australia spends around 2% of GDP every year. That is on course to rise under Labor. The coalition suggesting that it could reach 2.5% by the end of this decade, with further investment in new fighter jets and other technology as well. You see Germany on that screen at 1.7%. In the last few hours, the German parliament has passed a range of laws essentially allowing for up to $1 trillion of new spending, including on defence, on infrastructure, as it looks to play a larger role, stepping up to fill that gap as the US retreats from some of the defence in European areas, and that commitment as one of those many European nations and NATO nations now required to step up.
It shows a resolve and a will across the German Bundestag, which is a very powerful signal to Europe and also to Moscow.
And a recognition that they're facing a new Europe as well, I guess.
I think there is a recognition that wherever the whole future of NATO lands, Europe does need to step up. And there have been calls for that, not just from Washington, from within Europe. And I think this, tragically, though the motivation is, this is the time for Europe to step up.
And separately, Cam, the coalition promising to raise the bar to become an Australian.
Yeah, this involves the citizenship test, Kieran. The coalition putting forward today a commitment that if it wins the election, it will add a question to the citizenship test around anti-Semitism to try and filter out, or at least flag, if anyone attempting to become an Australian citizen harbours anti-Semitic views. There was an initial pledge from the opposition leader to do this for visa assessments by changing the Migration Act. He made that commitment at the Sky News Anti-Semitism Summit. Today, going one step further, the coalition suggesting a similar sort of test and a bar could be set for those looking to become citizens. The question around whether this would be an automatic disqualification if somebody was to fail that question, the indication from the coalition is that it isn't, or it wouldn't be. They are, however, committing today to raising that bar to try and give authorities a greater heads up if anybody's trying to become a citizen, whether they are quietly harbouring dangerous views.